Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little different. You're going to wake up in a place you can't quite name, under a sky that doesn't belong to you, on ground that remembers far more than it says. The year is 1587. The sun is already up, filtered through tall pine trees that hum with wind and a kind of ancient stillness. There's sand in your boots, a sour taste in your mouth, and an uncomfortable hush crawling between the wooden huts of a half-built settlement. You are in Roanoke, the New World, where everything is older than England, but speaks in signs instead of syllables. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it there? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into the night's journey together. You wake to birds you don't recognize, not robins or wrens or even pigeons, but sharp, laughing things with long tails and secretive eyes. They perch on the roof beams above you, waiting to see if you'll get up or disappear like the others. Your bed is a raised slab of logs, stacked and bound with willow cord. The blanket is deer hide. You're not really cold, but your skin knows you're not home. Around you, the morning fog clings low to the earth, filling gaps between half-finished fences and walls made of palmetto and pine bark. Someone's fire is still smoking. But there's no voice, no hammering, no rustling of corn. You pull on your boots. They're cracked and gritty. A rooster calls, but not yours, someone else's, from across the clearing. And still no one is moving. You step out, blinking against the gray haze, and feel your way through a silence that's almost thick enough to chew. You pass the church frame, just posts in the dirt and a crude cross that already leans. You pass the stockade gate, built from split cedar poles and wishful thinking, and still no one. Finally, near the well, you spot Thomas. His back is turned, head low. You call his name, and he doesn't answer. Turns out he's praying, whispering some half-remembered psalm about lions and snares. You join him for a moment, not because you're devout, but because standing alone here feels like tempting fate. The colony isn't supposed to feel like this. It's supposed to hum with saws and shouts, children and chickens, arguments and ambition. Instead, it feels like a ruin that hasn't even been finished yet, something abandoned before it began. You glance down and notice a broken tin spoon in the sand, already half buried by the wind. It was silver-plated once, part of a wedding dowry. Now it's rusting like everything else. You try to shake off the unease. It's early, you tell yourself. People are out foraging, maybe down by the shore, gathering oysters or catching fish. Maybe they're just sleeping in. But deep down, you know the air is too still, too watchful. You head to the edge of the camp, past the row of thatched shelters, each one hunched like an old man waiting for news. And that's when you realize there's no dog barking, not a single child's laugh. Just the cry of those strange birds and the sea wind pushing against your ears like it wants in. You see a single footprint, small, bare, pressing deep into the sandy path leading toward the woods. One print, no others. The next has been erased, as if the ground forgot how to remember. You follow the path anyway. It curves past the dying herb garden, where mint and sage grow wild among weeds. You bend and run your fingers through the stalks, just to feel something normal. But even the leaves smell faintly wrong, stronger, sharper, like the land is overcompensating. You keep walking. The woods are just 20 paces off, but they feel further. You remember stories the native guides told you of spirits in the trees, of owls that speak in riddles and foxes that vanish into mist. You laughed at them once, back when you believed in paved streets and governors who kept their promises. Now the forest looks back at you. You hesitate, then step in. The pines whisper, as they always do, bending just slightly more than they should. The air is cooler here, still wet with dew. You think you hear a footstep to your left, but when you look, nothing. Just ferns and broken branches. You tell yourself it's just a deer, maybe a raccoon. Maybe that weird raccoon thing they call sockin' nut that keeps stealing your cornbread. You follow the curve of the path until it splits. One fork goes left toward the lagoon. The other disappears into thicker brush. And there, scratched into the trunk of a low tree, is a mark. It's not letters, not exactly. Just a crude spiral with lines branching out like sun rays or roots. It might be native, or maybe just idle scratching. You stare at it anyway, feeling the weight of eyes on the back of your neck. You don't turn around. You've read enough stories to know better. You go back. At camp, someone has started a fire. Smoke curls upward, thin and uncertain. There are 3 people around it now: Thomas, Agnes, and a boy named Jonah who still dreams of London. Their faces are pale, eyes wide. "They're not back," Agnes says before you can ask. "The men who went to check the fish traps? Hours ago." You look out toward the sea. It stretches wide, blank, gray, and unknowable. Somewhere beyond it, John White is sailing away, back toward England. You saw him go, watched the sail shrink until it vanished. He promised he'd return before winter. He left in July. It's October now.
You remember the voyage, not the romance of it. The paintings back in London lied, but the real bits. You remember the stink. You remember the sea. You remember how long it took to stop hearing the groan of the ship's hull in your dreams. You remember praying, not for salvation, but for the wind to change. It started in May. You boarded the Lion, 100-odd souls crammed together with barrels, chickens, and sacks of flour, already sprouting weevils. The plan was noble. Establish a permanent English settlement in Virginia. The kind of plan rich men toast over wine while poor men haul water and catch dysentery, trying to make it real. The first week at sea, everything smelt of salt, sweat, and spoiled onions. The deck pitched enough to toss you into your bunkmate's lap every night, and you learned quickly not to trust the ship's biscuit unless you enjoyed chewing something that crunched back. There was a game of is it bread or bug that became less funny every day. By the second week, the ship reeked of fear. 2 children were buried overboard, 1 fever, 1 fall. The sea was a flat, indifferent grave, and you learned not to look too long at the horizon. It didn't move fast, but it moved forever. At night, you listened to the murmurs of men who didn't believe this Virginia place existed. One of them swore it was just a Spanish trick, a phantom on a map to lure the Queen's ships to ruin. Another claimed he'd seen mermaids off the coast of Portugal, though they were probably just pale dolphins and too much grog. You clung to one word: Roanoke. It sounded like something solid. Not heaven, not hell, just land. Somewhere to step off the boat and breathe without the air tasting like mold and rat dung. Captain John White, your appointed governor, was more artist than sailor. He drew maps. He quoted Pliny. He squinted into the distance like it owed him something. His daughter, Eleanor Dare, was heavy with child and walked the deck like a woman trying to remember how to stand still. Her husband, Ananias, mostly prayed. You suspected he was praying that the baby would wait to be born on land. The voyage dragged through June. The sails slackened, the crew grew thin-lipped and sunburned. You saw a man whip another over a stolen lemon. The smell of tar clung to everything. Then one morning, a shout, "Land!" The deck flooded with bodies pressing against the rail. At first it was just a line, a smear of green smudged between sea and sky. But as the sun climbed, it sharpened. Trees, shore, a sliver of beach cradled by inlets. The Outer Banks, Roanoke Island. You arrived mid-July, feet squelching onto sand that shimmered with heat. Birds wheeled overhead. Crickets chirped in languages older than any crown. And for a brief, foolish moment, you thought, maybe it will work. You expected to find the 1585 settlers, or at least their remains. You found neither. Just burned timbers, weeds reclaiming fences, and silence so complete it made your molars ache. Historians still argue whether those earlier men starved, fled, or fought their way into oblivion. You just knew there were no welcome flags, no fires, no food. Still, you set to work. There wasn't much choice. The baby was due, the stores were low, and the sea didn't look eager to take you back. You spent your first week hauling planks and dragging barrels up the beach. The heat was the kind that crept into your shoes and boiled your ankles from the toes up. You drink water that tasted faintly of iron and sweat. And every night you fell asleep to the chirr of insects that sounded just a little too intelligent. Virginia Dare was born August 18th. They called her the first English child born on American soil. You were there. You remember Eleanor screaming, but quietly, as if the trees might overhear. The birth was quick, strange, and oddly calm. The baby came out with eyes wide open, staring. The old women said that was a sign. No one said of what. You carved a cradle from driftwood and lined it with grass. She slept like a stone, as if she belonged to the land more than any of you did. That night someone left a posy of wildflowers at the cradle's foot, bright orange things that nobody can name. By September, you'd stop counting the days. The work became muscle memory. Chop, carry, dig, patch. The rhythm of survival doesn't leave much space for anything else. You built palisades, you mended sails. You found ways to stretch 3 cups of meal into 5. You watched as the sassafras trees swayed, like dancers just out of reach. There was always the dream of trade. Harriet's report from the first expedition made it sound simple. Beads for furs, 10 for maize, a handshake and everyone eats. But real trade is trickier. It smells of mistranslation and sweat. Some days the Croatoan people came with fish, nuts, roots you'd never seen before. Other days they came with nothing but stares. You tried to smile. You learned to nod. You tried not to reach for your knife. One man, Wanchase, had once sailed to England and returned bitter. He called your tools cursed and spat at your shoes. Monteo, by contrast, was your ally, or at least he wanted something. You couldn't always tell what. Still, the island breathed. You watched deer cross the shallows at dusk. You listened to the drums from far-off villages and told yourself it was celebration, not warning. You chewed dried beans and counted how many arrows you had left. And always, you thought of England. The smell of baked bread, the clatter of carts, the warm crush of a tavern. But it was all just memory, a theater show you once saw, the kind with painted flats and fake thunder. London felt like something someone told you about once, but you were too tired to listen. And the child grew. Virginia laughed. That felt like hope. Eleanor smiled again. That felt like home. But the sky never stopped watching.
You dig. You dig like it might save you. The ground is stubborn here, sandy on top, but packed with roots beneath. Every time your spade hits something, it thuds like a warning drum. Still, you keep going. The new palisade needs bracing. The huts need leveling. The fire pit caved in last night, and the only thing more exhausting than digging is not digging and thinking about what that silence means. You're a builder now, not by trade, but by necessity. The kind of builder who uses what's available: cedar poles, pine pitch, rope made of twisted bark. You once held a hammer back in Sussex. Now you tie rocks to sticks and hope they don't splinter before the next hard wind comes. You learn to shape walls from whatever the land gives you: wood, mud, oyster shells, a little prayer. The houses rise slowly, more like domes really, round, low, lashed together with cord and thatched in overlapping layers of grass and bark. From a distance, the settlement probably looks like a cluster of overturned baskets crouched between forest and marsh. You joke that it resembles a hedgehog having a bad day. Others call it the New London, with a chuckle that doesn't quite reach their eyes. There are 28 of you building, 29 if you count little Jonah, who insists on supervising with a piece of string and a tiny hammer carved from driftwood. He's 6. He thinks you're all pirates. You let him believe it. The air is wet today, wet like someone left a kettle on for the entire continent. Your shirt sticks to your back, sawdust clings to your neck. You squint into the sun and wonder, not for the first time, if maybe it's not really the heat that's draining you, but something else. Like the land itself is watching and deciding whether or not you belong here.
You swing your mallet again. The sound echoes flat. It doesn't come back. Thomas is next to you, murmuring about ghosts and the trees again. He's harmless, mostly. But he started carving strange symbols into the beams when no one's watching. You scrape the last ones off, but not before copying one on the inside of your shirt, just in case. You're not superstitious, you just don't want to be the only one unmarked when the shadows get hungry. Agnes and 2 others are down by the shallows, grinding oyster shells into powder for lime. The shells come from a nearby inlet, collected by hand. When crushed and mixed with water, they form a paste to bind the clay bricks. You marvel at it every time. Crushed seashells turn to glue, just like they do it back in Sheppey. One of those strange little facts from Harriet's report that turns out to be true, a small miracle in a place not known for kindness. You've also stopped keeping track of the failures. The first roof caved in, the second turned to sponge when it rained, the third blew off in the wind. But this one, this 4th one, it might hold. You pat the beam like a mule's flank and mutter something encouraging. It's a builder's secret, talking to wood like it has ears. Food still arrives, but never on time. A few fish, some squash, a little dried venison when the hunters are lucky. Most of it comes from trade, if you can call it that. Beads and bells for nuts and tubers, tin cups for woven mats. You never know what the Croatoan will bring or what they'll ask in return. Some days it's fish, other days just silence. Sometimes they bring gossip, stories of lights in the woods, or a sickness in the West that eats men from the inside out. Historians still argue whether the English ever understood the true nature of these exchanges. Trade wasn't just about goods. It was ceremony, language, subtle signs. You handed them a mirror. They handed you a message. You weren't always sure which side was being polite and which side was offering a warning. Still, you work. Still, you build. Children chase lizards between huts. Mothers swap flies and mash roots into porridge. Someone starts a song and forgets the words halfway through. There's a quiet rhythm forming. Wake, work, eat, worry, sleep, repeat. One woman, Sibylla, has taken to making dolls from corn husks. She sews them with sinew and gives them tiny black stone eyes. They're lined up on her porch now, like little guards. No one talks about them much, but you notice no one touches them either, especially not at night. You light the torches at dusk. Pine resin and dry moss make them flare, then settle into a smoky glow. The camp changes with the firelight. It softens. It feels almost real, almost safe. You sit by the flames and try to ignore the sense that something just outside the glow was waiting. Montio joins you sometimes. He rarely speaks first. When he does, it's slow and deliberate. Tonight, he tells you a story about a mountain that walked. You don't know if it's a parable or a memory, but you listen. He ends with 3 words. Watch the trees. You don't sleep that night. The wind rises, the walls creak, you pull the blanket tighter, but the air inside your hut feels too still. You close your eyes. You open them again. Still nothing. Just the faint sound of waves in the distance and the trees breathing their long, quiet thoughts. In the morning, you wake to dew on your face and your boots full of sand. You didn't leave them outside. You didn't even leave them near the door. Later, you find a small bone placed neatly on your stoop. It's not carved, not painted, just clean and smooth. Too clean. Someone says it's a gift. Someone else says it's a warning. You say nothing. You just keep building. The wall rises another inch that day. The sun burns hotter. Someone drops a hammer and curses. Someone laughs too loudly. You wipe the sweat from your face and look up. In the trees, something moves. You follow Manteo through the marsh at dawn. He moves quietly, as if the reeds have taught him not to disturb their secrets. You trail behind, feet squelching in soft mud, trying not to trip on twisted roots or snag your sleeve on the bony limbs of low-hanging branches. The world is gray and hushed, except for the occasional wet slap of water against rock,
and the slow grind of insects waking up. You're not entirely sure why you're going with him today. He said one word the night before. Croatoan. That was enough. The air smells different out here. Not the smoke and salt of Roanoke, but green things, thick and earthy. You can taste it if you breathe too deeply. The wind barely moves, like it's trying to eavesdrop. You pass the last edge of your makeshift colony and enter the woven silence of the land beyond. The forest presses in tighter, not menacing exactly, but aware of you. You never quite shake the feeling that every tree, every stone, every patch of moss knows you don't belong here. Manteo seems smaller somehow, less like a guide and more like a thread you're following through a tangle that doesn't want to be untied. He leads you to a narrow inlet where two canoes wait, already in the water. One is carved from a single cypress trunk, polished by time. The other, patched with resin, smells like fire and cedar. Manteo nods, and you step in. The canoe rocks gently, as if warning you not to move too quickly. You grip the sides and settle your weight. You begin to paddle. Water parts in long, slow sighs. The rhythm is easy to find, but hard to maintain. Your arms ache. Your shoulders burn. But you don't stop. Manteo doesn't look back, so neither do you. The island ahead is low and green, its shoreline mottled with driftwood and oyster shells. You've heard the word Croatoan whispered around camp for weeks now. Some think it's a refuge, some a trap. Some claim the word came to them in dreams before they ever crossed the Atlantic. You're not sure what you believe. As you approach, you see movement shapes against the trees. 3 figures, 2 men, 1 woman. They don't hide, don't raise weapons. They simply wait. You step out into knee-deep water, boots sinking into the soft, cold mud. Manteo exchanges quiet words with the tallest man. You understand nothing but feel everything. This is not an ambush. It is not a welcome either. It is something older, more watchful. They lead you to a fire, small and low, surrounded by stone seats sunken deep into the earth, as if they've been warmed for generations. The woman, whose name you never catch fully, hands you a strip of smoked fish folded in bark. You chew slowly. It tastes of salt and wind. You feel it settle deep in your stomach like an anchor. The talk is sparse. Manteo speaks when needed, translating enough to keep you from making mistakes. They ask about the English, about the governor, about the child. You mention Virginia Dare, and the woman nods once, not smiling, not frowning. The men look past you when they speak, as if they're addressing someone who isn't here yet. You're shown a garden, a small patch of maize and beans and squash, staked with fish bones and decorated with feathers and shells. One of the men, called Oko, pats the earth with his palm as he walks between the rows. He sings to the plants. His voice is barely above a whisper. You ask Manteo what he's saying. Manteo shrugs and says he's telling them where the rain has gone. They show you tools, too. Not weapons, but things for carving, fishing, grinding. Every item seems to fit perfectly into the hands that made it. You're reminded of your own tools back in Roanoke, blunt, rusting, borrowed. These are older, quieter, worn smooth by stories you'll never know. You notice the children, too. 2 boys, 1 girl. Their eyes follow you, but not with fear, more like curiosity or amusement. The girl is weaving something from dry grass, humming a tune that skips like water over stones. In the afternoon, Manteo takes you deeper into the island, away from the fire, into a grove where the trees grow in a circle. At the center is a ring of stones, no bigger than a cartwheel, smooth, upright, deliberate. You step carefully,
Unsure if this is a sacred place or a warning, Manteo crouches by one of the stones and runs his fingers across the moss-covered surface. He tells you it's a place for watching the sky. You wonder if that means stars or omens. You don't ask. You sit there for a while, listening to the wind move through the leaves. It doesn't feel dangerous. It feels patient. On the way back to the canoes, you hear drums, just 2 beats, then silence. Manteo pauses, but doesn't turn. You do. The forest looks exactly the same as it did before. The sound doesn't repeat. You paddle back in silence. The sky has turned a deeper blue, the sun hanging low, sending orange veins across the water. You think of the camp, of Jonah, of Eleanor holding her baby and staring into the fire like she's waiting for someone who hasn't come back. You think of Thomas, still muttering about signs carved into trees. You think of the dolls lined up in Sibylla's doorway, of the single footprint in the sand that led nowhere. Just before you land, Manteo says one word, smook. You ask him what he means. He points toward the trees behind Roanoke. Tomorrow, he says. That night you sleep lightly. You dream of circles, of stone rings, of canoes that drift without paddlers. You wake once, sure that someone is standing at the edge of your hut. But when you look, there's only the moon and a deer chewing moss from the side of a fence. In the morning, there's smoke on the horizon. Not thick, not violent. A thin, lazy spiral rising from a place you haven't been. You don't know if it's a signal or an invitation, but you know it's for you. You stand at the edge of the water and watch the governor disappear. The sails shrink slowly, like someone pinching out a flame from across the sea. The lion grows smaller with every breath. You don't wave. No one does. That's not the kind of goodbye this is. This isn't a celebration or a send-off. This is a gamble, and most of you know it. John White promised he'd be back before the leaves fell. He said it with a straight face, which made it worse. You could tell he meant it. But promises don't fill bellies. Promises don't shield you from cold or hunger or whatever it is you keep hearing move in the forest when you try to sleep. He left on August 27th, just 9 days after the birth of his granddaughter, Virginia Dare. He held the baby gently, kissed his daughter on the forehead, and told them to wait for him. He would bring food, fresh tools, more settlers, and word from England. He would return before winter. Everyone nodded. What else could you do? Now, you sit on a rock by the shoreline staring at the place where the ship vanished. The water is calm, the sky clear. It should feel peaceful, but all you feel is a dull ache in your chest, like something vital has been taken, like you've been unhooked from the world and are drifting quietly out of sight. That night, no one lights a fire. Maybe it's superstition, maybe it's just exhaustion. You all sit in silence as the stars come out, one by one, like eyes you can't avoid. Jonah asks where the ship is going. His mother says, to London. He asks how long it takes to walk to London from here. She doesn't answer. The next morning, work resumes. There are traps to check, shelters to patch, roots to boil. You tear at bark with numb fingers, your hands swollen and blistered. No one complains anymore. There's no one to complain to. The food stores are low. The corn crop didn't take well in the poor soil. The fish have moved elsewhere. You dig for roots you can't name. Someone tries eating a new kind of berry and throws up for 2 days straight. You bury a man who stopped waking up. You don't talk about him. You don't even say his name. Manteo tries to help. He brings a few fish, some herbs, bark tea for the fevers. He tells you to leave offerings by the western tree when the wind changes. You don't know if it's a remedy or a ritual. Either way, you try it. It feels better than nothing. You take stock of what you have. 78 people, 2 barrels of meal, 6 sacks of flour half ruined by damp, a few axes most already dulled, not enough nails, not enough salt, plenty of questions though, and the worst kind of hunger, the kind that isn't quite pain, but won't leave you alone. Historians still argue whether White's departure was inevitable or whether the colonists should have gone with him. Some say he never wanted to leave at all. Others whisper that his voyage was forced, his return delayed by war with Spain, by pirates, by the sheer indifference of the Atlantic Ocean. None of that matters to you now. All you know is this: he's gone. Every day after, you measure time by what doesn't happen. No sails appear on the horizon. No native visitors bring trade. No messages arrive carved in bark. Just the sun rising too hot, setting too early, and the slow shrinking of what's left of hope. Eleanor tries to stay strong. She sings to Virginia at night, quiet songs from across the sea. Her voice is thin but steady. The baby doesn't cry much, just stares wide-eyed, like she understands more than she should. You catch her gaze once and feel like you're being studied. Sibylla sews small bags from scraps of cloth. She fills them with herbs and hangs them from the doorways. She won't say what they're for, but the smell is sharp and unfamiliar. Thomas insists they're for protection. Others say they're for mourning. You're not sure there's a difference anymore. One afternoon, you walk to the edge of the forest with 2 others looking for kindling. You find something carved into a tree. Not a word, not a name, just a spiral, small, clean, new. You stare at it for a long time. No one says anything. That night you hold a meeting by firelight. The talk is hushed, like children afraid of being overheard. You discuss options. Wait for the governor, try to reach Croatoan, head inland, split the group. There's no good choice, just degrees of risk. Someone suggests building another boat. You almost laugh. Almost. The meeting ends with nothing decided. The fire burns low. You watch it flicker and think about what it means to be forgotten. Not just by kings or governments or cities, but by the ocean, by time. A few days later, you wake to find footprints outside the camp. Bare feet, small. Not Jonah's, not anyone you recognize. They lead from the edge of the woods to the well, then vanish. You don't speak of it, but everyone walks a little faster the next day. You dream that night of England. Not the real England, but the one you carried in your mind when you left. Warm hearths, market noise, bread, people who speak without pausing to translate. You wake with tears on your face and no memory of the dream's end. That afternoon, you find a gift in the clearing. A woven basket lined with moss. Inside, berries, and a carved shell shaped like a spiral. You take the basket inside and share the berries. They taste like honey and earth. You keep the shell. You don't ask who left it.
The hunger doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps into your bones slowly, like cold water soaking through a boot. It begins as a dull ache in your belly that you try to ignore, something you can laugh off around the fire. You joke about roasted duck and meat pies, even though you haven't seen meat in over a week. You chew slowly, making every mouthful last, even when there's nothing but a watery mash of boiled roots and grass. At first, it's the little things. Jonah stops asking for eggs in the morning. He just sits on a log, legs swinging, eyes hollow. Eleanor sings less. The sound of her voice used to be a constant in the evenings, a thread of comfort weaving through the cold and the dark. Now she mostly rocks Virginia in silence. You think she's singing in her head, or maybe just listening for something that never comes. You try to stay busy,
There are always traps to check, wood to gather, fishing lines to untangle. But your arms are slower now. Your legs feel heavy. You find yourself pausing too long between tasks, hands on your knees, waiting for your breath to come back. You've lost weight. Everyone has. Cheekbones have sharpened. Fingers look longer. Even your reflection in the well seems stretched and tired, like it knows something you don't. The cornfields, if you can call them that, are nearly bare. The stalks grew fast in July, hopeful and green, but the summer sun scorched them, and the soil offered little in return. You try to save what you can, collecting the smallest kernels, drying them, grinding them into coarse meal. It's not enough. The beans are thin and bitter. The squash plants flowered, then wilted. The vines turned to string. You dig up what little you can find. Roots that taste like dust. Bulbs that make your tongue itch. Some of the colonists talk about leaving, heading inland, trying to find friendlier soil, more game, cleaner streams. But then someone reminds them that every trail beyond the woods might be watched, that not every village welcomes strangers, that some do worse than just say no. You begin trading more often with the Croatoan. Manteo brings what he can: smoked fish, a handful of herbs, dried berries pressed into cakes. He speaks less now, his visits growing shorter. He avoids eye contact. You can tell he knows something he won't say. When you thank him, he just nods and disappears into the trees like smoke. One afternoon, a group of you tries fishing at the inlet. The nets come up empty. You switch to spears. Nothing. Not even a ripple. The water is still and clear, but the fish are gone. Maybe they left. Maybe something else drove them out. You sit on the bank for an hour, listening to the buzz of insects in your own stomach. Later that evening, you boil bark. The pine makes a bitter tea that turns your tongue numb. Sibylla claims it helps. You believe her because belief is easier than despair. She also gives you a pouch filled with dried leaves and tiny bones. She says to hang it near your bed. You do. The smell is sharp and sour, but somehow you sleep a little better. That night, you dream of roast meat, the kind that crackles over a fire, dripping fat into the coals. You wake with your mouth wet, but the taste fades quickly. Outside, the wind rustles through the trees. You think you hear a voice. When you look, no one is there. One morning, Jonah disappears. His mother finds him an hour later, crouched beneath the chapel frame, chewing on a piece of raw bark. He doesn't cry. He just looks up at her and says he was pretending it was bread. She holds him for a long time. No one speaks of it again. You bury the second settler that week, an older man who simply didn't wake up. No signs of struggle, no fever, just empty lungs and a hollow chest. You dig the grave with two others in silence. The earth is soft from rain, but it still feels heavy. Someone tries to catch a bird, a small one, black feathers, quick wings. It flies off before they get close. The trap they built remains empty for days. One night, you find a feather on your doorstep, white, curved, fresh. You chew on moss, you chew on weeds, you chew on the inside of your cheek when there's nothing else. Hunger becomes its own kind of sound, buzzing in your ears when you stand too quickly. Agnes collapses while gathering firewood. She says she's fine. She isn't. Historians still debate whether the colonists simply ran out of food or if something more complex happened. Spoiled stores, failed diplomacy, illness. All you know is that your body is betraying you, slowly and without apology. You look around and see it in everyone else too. Hollow faces, slumped shoulders, people avoiding mirrors and conversation. One evening, Manteo returns with a warning. He speaks softly to the few who still gather near the fire. He says there is a sickness spreading inland, something that rots from the inside. He doesn't describe the symptoms. He doesn't need to. You see the fear in his eyes. You ask if the Croatoan are safe. He hesitates, then says, "For now." You light smaller fires now, not because you fear attack, but because you can't spare the wood. You save every scrap of food, every pinch of salt. You start assigning rations by age. The children get more. The adults pretend not to mind. That night, you find Thomas kneeling by the palisade. He's drawing shapes in the dirt, spirals, lines, circles within circles. When you ask what he's doing, he says he's preparing. For what, you ask? He doesn't answer. You walk the edge of the camp before bed. You count the houses. You count the faces. You count the stars. When you lie down, you feel the earth shift beneath you just slightly, like something is turning. In the morning, Virginia stares at you without blinking. Her hands are curled around a smooth white stone that you don't remember giving to her. You don't remember where it came from.
The moon is full again. You notice it first by how the shadows stretch, too long, too sharp, making the pine trunks look like spears leaning in. The trees cast tall, uneasy shapes across the clearing, and your cabin floor seems to ripple with the light filtering through the slats. It's a cold silver glow, unnatural in its brightness. It washes the world in a pale, dream-like sheen, as if you've stepped into some place slightly wrong. You're not alone in noticing. Others wander out too, squinting up at the sky like they expect answers. The fire is barely alive, a soft breath of ember, and no one moves to stoke it. It feels like a night where sound doesn't belong. That's when you see the mark. It's been carved low into the old tree by the fence, the same one where Jonah used to hang his shell wind chimes. Now a spiral curves neatly into the bark, not deep, but deliberate, too smooth to have been scratched in by accident. You run your fingers across it. It's clean, recent. You call over Agnes, ask if she's seen it. She blinks, peers close, then shakes her head. "Not mine," she says, and walks away without further comment. That night, sleep doesn't come easily. Every creak of timber feels like a footstep. You lie on your side, eyes fixed on the wall, watching moonlight shift across the boards. At some point, you must drift off because you dream of water. Black water, still and thick, reflecting stars that pulse like eyes. In the morning, you find another mark, this time on the side of the barrel where rainwater collects. It's different, a crosshatch made of 4 lines and 1 diagonal slash, like a tally. You call over Eleanor. She stares at it too long, then whispers, "I think I've seen that before." You ask where. She doesn't answer. The symbols begin to spread, one by the chapel frame, one behind the smokehouse, one etched into the handle of the gate. Always different. A bird, a crooked handprint, an eye. Some in charcoal, some cut into wood, others drawn with something sticky and red-brown. You hope it's sap. You really hope it's sap. Historians still debate the purpose of the carvings. Some argue they were warnings made by the colonists themselves. Others think they were signs left by outsiders, or something darker, expressions of panic turned into ritual. The truth? You don't know. All you know is they keep showing up, always under the light of a full moon. Manteo comes the next day. He says little. He walks the perimeter with you, eyes scanning the tree line. When he sees the spiral, his jaw tightens. He touches it with 2 fingers, then wipes them quickly on his tunic. "This is old," he mutters. "Older than me." He won't explain further. That night, Jonah hears singing. At first, it's faint, a kind of humming, low and slow, not unpleasant, just wrong. He wakes you, points toward the trees. You listen. There's nothing at first. But then, beneath the rustling of the leaves, you hear it too. A voice. Female. Maybe more than one. No words. Just sound. You grab the old musket, still half loaded, and walk toward the edge of the woods. You don't see anything. But the humming stops when you get within 10 steps of the first pine. You wait. Nothing. Not even a breeze. The silence is worse than the sound. The next day, Sibylla starts burning cedar needles, says it wards off spirits, says the Croatoan used to do it when they lost people in the woods. You notice others following her lead. Tiny fires at doorways, braids of grass above thresholds. Not superstition, they say, just caution. You don't blame them. That afternoon, you find a doll. It's made of sticks, bound with thread, dressed in a scrap of cloth that looks like it came from one of Jonah's old tunics. It has no face. It's tied to the highest branch of a sapling near the creek. No footprints nearby. No sign of who left it. You burn it. You watch it turn black and curl in the flames, and still the smell clings to your clothes for hours afterward. That night, Thomas draws circles in the dirt. He doesn't speak, just sits beside the fire, dragging his fingers in looping spirals, muttering numbers under his breath. Agnes tries to stop him. He jerks away, snarls like an animal, then goes silent again. The next morning, he doesn't remember doing it. The moon is still full. You check the almanac left behind by one of the sailors. It doesn't match. The moon shouldn't be full tonight, or the night before that, or the night before that. You look at the sky again and feel your stomach drop. On the 4th night, something leaves a gift. A bundle wrapped in leaves sits at the foot of the chapel frame. Inside, a dried fish head, a twist of herbs, and a stone shaped like an egg. You call the others. They gather, whispering, poking the items with sticks. Mantio says nothing, only watches. Then he steps forward, takes the bundle, and tosses it into the fire. "We were warned," he says. "We did not listen." You want to ask who warned you, but he's already gone. That evening you find a footprint. Small, bare, human, but the toes are too long. You compare it to your own. It's wrong. You cover it with dirt and say nothing. Jonah wakes screaming that night. He says there was someone in the window, a woman with no face, only light where her eyes should be. He won't go near that side of the house anymore. You switch sleeping spots. You start watching the moon in fear. It feels like it is watching back.
You wake up to silence, the kind that presses against your ears and makes your heart thump louder in your chest. The birds have stopped calling. Even the wind seems to have curled up somewhere far away. You sit up slowly, listening for any sound. A footstep, a whisper, the rustle of the trees. Nothing. You step outside and notice it immediately. There are no footprints in the sand. Not yours, not anyone's. The ground is smooth, untouched, like no one walked here at all yesterday. But you did. You're sure of it. You remember checking the traps, speaking with Eleanor, helping Sibylla tie herbs above the doorway. But none of those prints are here. You call out, softly at first, then louder. No answer. The houses are still, the cooking pit's cold, the smokehouse door hangs ajar. You knock on 3 doors before you find anyone. Thomas opens the 4th door, eyes wide and sleepless. He says, "They're gone." You ask who. He says, everyone who heard the voice. You step back. In the chapel, you find Eleanor holding Virginia in a tight grip. She won't speak. She just rocks slowly, her eyes fixed on the far wall. When you finally coax her to look at you, she whispers, "She sang to them." That night, no one builds a fire. Everyone who's still here gathers inside one structure, huddled close, speaking in whispers, if at all. You count only 16 people. Last week, there were over 40. You try to convince yourself they went hunting, that they moved to the creek, that they followed Manteo. But deep down, you don't believe it. You saw no tracks, no carts, no sign of struggle. One of the boys claims he saw them walking into the woods, silent, eyes open, but empty, like sleepwalkers. He says they didn't blink. He says they were following someone tall, a woman in white. No one can confirm it. No one dares ask him to say it again. The next day, you try to take control. You organize watches, pairs of 2, always awake, always armed. You set a rule. No one goes outside after dark. No exceptions. You assign chores, fetching water, checking the fish traps, rebuilding the fire pit. Anything to keep hands busy and minds from unraveling. But it doesn't hold. That evening, Sibylla is found sitting by the well, barefoot, hands coated in red clay. She says she was painting protection symbols, but there's no paint, just the red dust, smeared in shapes on the stones. You wash it off. She screams when you do. Agnes begins writing again, this time on the walls. You catch her scratching patterns with the broken end of a spoon. Spirals, eyes, and something that might be teeth? You try to stop her. She says, "I have to keep the rhythm." You take away the spoon. She starts using a nail. Jonah hums to himself all day now, not a tune you know, not even something that resembles music, just 4 notes. Over and over. He says it keeps them away. One night, one of the watchers disappears. His name was Randall. Quiet man. Always did his job, never said much. His partner swears he only stepped away to relieve himself. Never came back. They find his hat near the tree line. Nothing else. That's when someone suggests building signs, like the Croatoan did. Words, left behind, in case someone ever comes looking. You vote on it. The word chosen is Croatoan. Sibylla insists it holds power, protection, maybe even passage. You carve it onto a fence post, onto a barrel lid, onto the inside of your shelter door. Croatoan, Croatoan, Croatoan. But even as you carve, you can feel the unease deepen. The letters look strange under the moonlight, like they don't belong to your hands, like you're copying something that never wanted to be spoken aloud. That night, the moon returns again. It wasn't full yesterday, but tonight, it is. Big and white and watching. You feel it in your bones. The tide is high. The trees lean away from it. You sleep in fits, wake to distant sounds, knocks, voices, wind that speaks your name. At one point, you find Virginia standing by the door, staring out. You ask what she's looking at. She says she wants to be let in. You don't ask who. Historians still argue whether psychological breakdown played a role in the colony's fate. Hunger, isolation, the pressure of unknown lands, these are real forces. But there's no easy explanation for how a group could vanish so completely without a trace. Some blame native raids, others suspect disease or a mass migration. But the deeper you sink into this silence, the less human the truth begins to feel. You keep trying. You check the woods again, leaving markers behind, stacked stones, a red ribbon tied to a branch. You walk in a straight line, counting your steps. But every time, no matter how far you go, you hear something just behind you. Not a footstep, more like breathing or waiting. Once you find a clearing you don't remember, a circle of burnt grass, perfectly shaped. In the center, a doll made of ash and bound twine. You leave immediately. Back in camp, Jonah is missing. You find him crouched beneath the chapel frame, just like the first time. Only now he's whispering something to the dirt. You lean closer. He's reciting names. Every lost colonist. In order. You don't know how he remembers them all. You don't know how he knows who's next. That evening, you pack a satchel. Just in case. Dried roots, a flint, a knife. You don't say goodbye to anyone, not because you're leaving tonight, but because part of you is preparing for the night you might need to. Croatoan. You whisper it before sleep, like a prayer, or a warning, or both.
You wake up, choking. Smoke curls through the rafters of your cabin, not thick or fiery, but bitter like someone burned the wrong kind of leaf on purpose. You stagger to your feet, wave it away, and realize it's coming from a smoldering bundle of cedar and pine needles set in a clay bowl near the door. Someone left it there while you slept. You open the door to cool air and stillness. No birds, no footsteps. Just the distant creak of wood swaying slightly, even though there's no wind. You look around. No footprints in the sand this morning either. Not yours, not the others. It's like the earth has exhaled, wiped itself clean. You glance back at the bowl of herbs and wonder who left it burning. You didn't. You're sure of that. Across the clearing, the doors to the other shelters remain closed. The chapel frame stands crooked. You count structures. 11. You remember 13 people remained last night, but only 10 show up for the morning meal. Eleanor arrives late, hair wild, clutching Virginia so tightly the child's arms dangle limp. Her eyes are red. She won't speak. You try to ask where Thomas is. She just stares through you like you're already gone. That's when you hear it, a sound from the woods. 3 drum beats, slow, hollow, faint enough to doubt you heard anything. Then silence. Then 3 more. A few minutes later, another set, this time from a different direction. And again, always 3, always from somewhere else. You and Jonah step toward the forest edge, staring into the trees. Nothing moves. You don't speak. You both know it's not something you should chase. You just listen, hearts sinking deeper with each distant thump. It feels less like a warning and more like a rhythm, something counting down. Historians still argue whether the colonists fled voluntarily, perhaps merging with friendly tribes like the Croatoan to survive. It's possible, but as you listen to those rhythmic thuds echoing through the trees, you wonder if anyone left by choice, or if they were drawn, like moths, to an open flame. That evening, Sibylla calls a meeting. You gather around the cold fire pit. No one sits. You all stand in a loose circle, like trees pretending not to be afraid of the dark. Sibylla holds a pouch in one hand and a clay bowl in the other. She says there's a chant she learned from her grandmother, who learned it from a woman who came across the sea with herbs sewn into her dress and dreams she claimed weren't hers. She says, it's not Christian, but it's old. Sometimes old things are stronger than right things. She doesn't smile when she says it. No one objects. You all nod, or at least fail to say no. She builds a circle in the dirt, rosemary, ash, crushed pine cones. Everyone steps inside, except Eleanor, who stays with Virginia near the shelter. Sibylla lights the bowl, adds something sharp-smelling, and begins to speak.
It doesn't sound like any language you know. The syllables rise and fall like waves crashing on a rocky coast. Her voice changes, becomes deeper, steadier. She circles the group, her shadow long and flickering in the low firelight. When she stops, the air feels cleaner and heavier, like standing inside a sealed room where something very large is breathing just out of sight. When you open your eyes again, Agnes is gone. No one saw her leave. She was right there between Jonah and the boy named Caleb. You call for her, search the perimeter, the woods, you light torches. Nothing. She left no trace, not even a footprint. You don't sleep that night. Neither does Jonah. He paces the compound in a slow loop, dragging a stick along the ground to leave fresh marks. Circles, crosses, a jagged shape you can't identify. He tells you, they're watching through the cracks. I'm just reminding them that we see too. His eyes are sunken. His fingernails are black with ash. Eleanor screams sometime after midnight. You rush to her shelter and find her curled in the corner, arms around Virginia, eyes wide with terror. She was at the door. She didn't knock. She just stood there. She had Sybilla's face, but the wrong smile, too wide. You check outside. No tracks, no sounds, just cold. At dawn, Sybilla is missing too. You find her pouch sitting neatly by the chapel post, full of dried herbs and 2 little dolls, stick figures bound with hair. One is wrapped in red thread, one in black. You burn both without asking. You take inventory again. 8. Left now. You try to act normal. You split tasks. One group checks the traps. Another patches shelter holes. You draw lots for night watch duty. Jonah volunteers twice. He doesn't sleep anymore. Says dreams are dangerous now. Later that day, you find a path of white stones leading away from the chapel, placed carefully, almost mathematically. You follow it for 20 steps, then stop. The woods seem darker beyond a certain point, like something thick has gathered in the air, invisible but heavy. You go no farther. That evening, a new word is carved into the well. Not Croatoan, something else. A word you don't know. Sharp, angular letters like they were scratched by something in a hurry. The lines are shallow, but frantic like the carver stopped before finishing. You run your finger across it. It feels hot. You pull your hand back. Jonah says the letters aren't from any language he's seen, but the shapes make his head hurt. He tells you, don't say it out loud. Some things get bigger when you name them. You scrape the word away with your knife. You don't look at the metal afterward. That night, Jonah builds a new fire, not for warmth, but for burning things he says are listening. A journal, a spoon, a scrap of fabric with Sybilla's stitching. He stares into the flames, whispering numbers, 7s, 3s, 9s. You ask if the numbers mean something. He says they're what's left when the names go missing. You watch the fire until dawn. Only 7 of you remain now. No one says the names of the missing anymore, not because you've forgotten, but because it feels safer that way. Like holding on to their names might call something back. Croatoan remains carved in the center of the fence. You trace it once before bed. It still looks like goodbye. And tonight, the moon is full again.
The full moon floats above you like a pale, silent sentinel. It lights the colony with a silver that feels colder than shadow. The huts look skeletal now, bare ribs of a vanished people. Even your own shelter feels like it belongs to someone else, someone who lived here a lifetime ago. But that was last week, maybe just 5 days. Maybe time stopped counting altogether. 7 souls remain. You count them again after supper, like a child double-checking their marbles. You don't know why the number matters.
but it does. 6 others, plus you. Still human, still breathing. For now. You wake before dawn and find the well has been covered. A lid fashioned from branches and sinew, tied tight with a knot you don't recognize. There's no note, no footprints, just the lid. Jonah says leave it. If something wants to come out, don't be the one that lets it. You nod and move on. Virginia begins talking again. She speaks in couplets now, rhyming phrases, half nursery rhyme, half incantation. She stares into the air as she chants, her mother silent beside her. Turn the key and draw the line, 3 go out and none return. You ask where she heard that. Eleanor says nothing, just brushes Virginia's hair like she's deaf to the world. You leave them be. That morning, you find a symbol drawn in salt beside your shelter. You ask who placed it. No one admits to it. Jonah swears he ran out of salt days ago. You leave it there. You're not in the mood to test what it's keeping out or keeping in. You and Jonah walk to the far edge of the colony to check the animal traps. They've been empty for days, but today you find something. Not an animal, at least not fully. Its skin is gray, its bones wrong, and its eyes are open. Just 2 small black stones staring skyward, even though there's no skull. You bury it and don't speak of it. Historians debate whether starvation drove the colony to extremes. Some suggest the settlers may have wandered or been absorbed by native tribes to survive. Others argue they suffered from mass illness, hallucinations from moldy grain, or despair too heavy for the mind. But they never mention the eyes, or the stones, or the rhymes that linger after dark. That evening, Thomas begins walking in his sleep. You catch him before he reaches the tree line. His eyes are open, but he's not there. You shake him. He doesn't blink. He murmurs something about sails made of teeth. You slap him. Hard. He finally gasps and stumbles backward, confused and ashamed. You tell him to sleep with his back against the chapel, with the others. You don't sleep much anymore. The dreams are louder than the wind. You see shapes in the fog, tall, thin, bent backwards. You see yourself speaking, but you don't hear the words. Once you wake to the sensation of your own name being whispered, not into your ear, but into your bones. Eleanor begins drawing again. Not on the walls, but in the dirt. Maps, maybe. Or traps. Circles intersecting with stars and unfamiliar alphabets. She says she's remembering a place she's never been. She says she'll take Virginia there soon. You don't argue. Jonah shows you his new journal. Just symbols. Dozens of them. You ask what they mean. He says he doesn't know. That's why he's writing them down, to get them out of his head before they dig too deep. You try to keep a routine, just to pretend. You assign water duty. You check for tracks. You cook beans and dry them, even though no one's eating. You sweep the paths. You light the fire every night. You wait for morning. Every hour drips past like honey left in the sun. Slow, sticky, inevitable. Then Caleb goes missing. No sound, no scream. His bed still warm, his knife untouched, his boots by the door. You find a mark on the chapel wall, a handprint, not his, too long, too narrow, too many fingers. The 6 of you huddle in silence. Jonah builds a ring of stones around the sleeping area. He lays sticks at strange angles and whispers a word you don't want to know. You go inside. You close your eyes. You don't expect rest. Virginia is singing again. 4 were left and 2 went blind. 1 had teeth and 1 had time. You wake up to find the salt symbol wiped away, just a smear of gray across the soil, like it never mattered. The colony smells different now. Damp, sour, like something underground opened its mouth.
You check the well again. The cover is gone. The rope is missing. You lean over. Just dark. Deeper than it used to be. You don't drop a rock. You don't want to know how long it takes to hit the bottom. Later, you find Jonah sitting on the roof of the chapel, legs swinging slowly, muttering numbers. He looks at you and smiles a little too wide. You ask if he's okay. He says, "I've started to like the silence." That evening, Thomas doesn't come back from the woods. He said he was going to collect more pine for the fire. You told him not to go alone. He smiled, tired, and said he'd be fine. Now it's dark and you hear the drum beats again. Closer. 3 beats, then a pause, then 3 more, then 3. The last time it happened, someone vanished. This time, no one speaks. No one says his name. Just 5 of you remain. You sleep in shifts now, someone always watching, at least pretending to. In the distance, a shape moves through the trees. Tall, female, a silhouette against the mist. You close your eyes and pretend it's a tree, a trick, a deer. But in your heart, you know she's closer than she was yesterday. Croatoan. The word is scratched into the palm of your hand. You don't remember doing it, but it's there. Just faint, enough to look like it's always been.
The last candle burns out sometime before dawn. You're sitting in the chapel doorway, knees pulled tight, blanket over your shoulders, watching the stars fade one by one. The sky isn't blue yet, just a deep, heavy gray like wet wool pressed against the earth. Beside you, Eleanor snores softly. Virginia stirs, but doesn't wake. You think of shaking her, but what would you say? That it's time to rise and count the missing? Jonah is already awake, of course. He hasn't slept in 2 days. He's out near the garden, or what used to be the garden, arranging small rocks in deliberate lines. You walk over, quietly, stepping past the old corn stalks now brittle as bone. You ask him what he's making. "A warning," he mutters, not looking up. "Or an invitation. Maybe both." You nod like that makes sense. 5 of you left now. That number sticks in your throat like an unchewed seed. It's small enough to feel lonely, but just big enough to pretend there's still a community. You all still do your tasks in silence. Eleanor fetches water. Jonah draws sigils in charcoal. You keep the fire going, even if no one sits by it anymore. Caleb's shelter stands empty, and no one moves in. That's the rule now. Don't touch what belonged to the vanished. It's like their things hold a charge. Today, Virginia starts speaking to someone invisible. She sits near the tree line, legs crossed, giggling and nodding. You hear her say things like, "I know the way," and "It's almost open." Eleanor doesn't stop her, just watches with tired eyes and rubs her temples. You bring it up at night, while you share dried fish by the fire. Jonah says, "She sees what we don't. Children are like that." Then he looks at you and adds, "So are madmen." No one laughs. Later you find the word Croatoan again, not carved or scratched this time, burned into the ground, a perfect oval of ash in front of the chapel. The letters so sharp they sting your eyes. You don't know how it got there. No fire was lit. No one confesses. Some say the colonists left of their own accord, carving the word as a sign to future rescue parties, a code, a destination. But standing over that burned word, you don't feel clarity. You feel heat. The kind of heat that sticks to your ribs and makes the night buzz with invisible gnats. Jonah tells you he's been hearing things from the well. Not voices, exactly, just sounds. Breathing, shifting, like someone turning over in a bed of gravel. You want to call it nonsense, but you remember your own dreams, your own whispers. You just tell him not to listen too closely. Then one afternoon, you find Thomas's boots neatly placed outside the gate. Not torn,
not weathered, just there, as if he stepped out of them and vanished upward. You don't bring them inside. That evening, Eleanor tells a story. It's about a ship that arrived long before White's fleet, a vessel that made landfall here centuries ago, crewed by men whose names were never written down. They were looking for gold, of course, and they found something, buried, something wrapped in vines and bones and something else, something they took back on board. They say the ship caught fire in the harbor. No storm, no lightning, just burst into flame. Only 2 bodies were ever recovered, and neither of them had a face left. You ask where she heard that. She shrugs. Monteo mentioned it once when he was drunk. He said it was a story meant to keep children away from the marshes, but he wasn't laughing. You dream of the sea that night, not the ocean from your voyage, but a different sea, one that breathes, one whose waves roll backward. You see shapes on the shore, not men, not beasts, just outlines etched in red light, watching. You wake with sand in your mouth. Only 4 remain now. Jonah is gone. You found his final message on the chapel door, a symbol, 3 overlapping circles with a single eye in the center. Beneath it, I followed her. No one needs to ask who. The air turns colder. The fire won't catch. You gather wood, but it stays damp. You try flint, but the sparks fizzle. You sit in the dark, wrapped in blankets, waiting for dawn. It doesn't come. That morning, Virginia disappears. No sign of a struggle, no footprints. Just her necklace left beside the salt bowl you kept by the door, a little bird carved from shell, still warm when you pick it up. Eleanor doesn't cry. She just stares into the woods and says, "She walked ahead. She's waiting." You don't know what to say, so you say nothing. 3 of you now. You try to eat, but the food tastes like ash. You try to sleep, but your own name keeps echoing in your ears. It's not being spoken, just thought, repeated, pressed against your skull from the inside out. Jonah once said he saw the colony vanish in a dream, that it didn't fall, it unraveled, like a rope cut at both ends. He said the wind didn't carry their screams, it erased them. You're starting to believe he was right. Eleanor goes next. She walks out of the gate at dusk without a word. You follow for a few paces, calling her name. She doesn't turn, just steps into the brush and vanishes, like smoke through your fingers. You stand alone in the center of the camp. No fire, no sounds, just your heartbeat and the low hush of leaves whispering secrets you'll never decode. You walk to the chapel and kneel, not to pray, just to be still, to listen, to wait for your name to stop echoing. It doesn't. You are the last, and in that moment, you understand the cruelest part of this place isn't the fear. It's the forgetting. The way the names slide out of your mouth like vapor. The way your own face becomes a stranger in your thoughts. The way your footprints vanish before they're even cold. Croatoan. You carve it into the post before the dawn. Because you remember. It matters. Because someone has to.
You wake up to silence so deep it makes your ears ring. It is not peaceful silence. It is the heavy kind that makes you feel like the world has forgotten how to breathe. You sit up slowly, brushing dirt from your hands, and you realize something is different. The trees are too still. The air too cold. Even your own breath feels quieter than it should. No wind rustling the branches, no bird song, no distant sound of frogs or insects or fire popping. You are alone, completely alone. You call out a name, any name. Eleanor. Nothing. You say it louder. Still nothing.
Your voice vanishes into the stillness like a pebble thrown into deep water. Not even an echo comes back. You stand, your legs stiff. You move through the empty camp. There is no fire, just a circle of cold ashes where the flames used to dance. You walk to the chapel. Empty. The benches overturned. The door swinging open on cracked hinges. You go to the well. It is uncovered again, but when you peer down into it, you see no bottom, only a still blackness, a kind of darkness that swallows light instead of reflecting it. You whisper your own name just to hear something human. It comes out strange, too high and distant, like it doesn't belong to you anymore. You begin your morning routine, out of habit, not hope. You fetch water, even though no one will drink it. You set out rations, though no one is hungry. You sweep the paths, though no one will walk them. You even check the empty huts one by one. You already know what you'll find. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Even the things left behind feel faded, like they have started to forget what they were for. The blankets have lost their color. The spoons seem heavier than before. The shoes look like props in a play no one will ever perform again. You walk to the garden. The plants are wilted. The beans are shriveled. You pick one anyway, hold it in your hand for a long time, then drop it. It lands with no sound. You walk past the old storage shed. The door is shut, but something is carved into it. Not a word, just a swirl, a loop, a spiral that pulls your eyes toward its center and won't let go. You step back. You walk on. Jonah had once said the colony was unraveling, that it wasn't dying but being rewritten. You hadn't believed him then. Now you do. You keep walking, not toward anything in particular, just away from the center, away from the emptiness. Your feet take you down the old trail toward the marsh, where the reeds grow tall and thick and the air smells of wet decay. There you find the canoe. It is half sunk in the muck, covered in moss and dirt, the paddle cracked in half and wedged beneath a root. You kneel beside it and begin clearing the mud. You do not know why. Maybe because it is something to do with your hands. Maybe because it is the only thing that has shape and weight. You work for hours, your nails torn, your knees aching. Eventually, the canoe rocks loose. You push it into the water. It floats, barely. You climb in, and you drift. The current is slow. You guide yourself with your hands, the broken paddle trailing behind. As the trees pass and the sky shifts, you start to hum. A tune you do not recognize, but your lips know it. It feels older than memory. Maybe it is the same song Virginia used to sing. Maybe it is something she taught you in a dream. Hours pass, the river curves, the sun dips low. You do not remember falling asleep, but you do. And in that sleep, you dream. You see the colony again, but it is not empty. It is full of people, but their faces are blank, their mouths moving with no sound. And in the center stands the word again, Croatoan, burning, glowing, rotating slowly like the spiral on the door. You wake with a jolt. The canoe is stuck in reeds. The sky is gray and pale gold. Birds chirp and the wind rustles leaves. For a moment, it feels like the world has returned. You turn and see a village. Not the colony, a new one. Older, perhaps. Built from bark and reeds and smoke. You see a woman crouched over a fire, a child playing with a carved stick, an elder sitting silently, their eyes closed as if listening to something beyond sound. You step out of the canoe. The water is cold. The mud clings to your boots.
You stand at the edge of the world, and for the first time in days, you do not feel afraid. You feel seen. Someone calls your name. The name you forgot. You turn. The voice is not threatening. It is familiar. It sounds like a lullaby, like home. You take one step forward, then another. They are waiting for you. They have always been waiting. Not as judges, not as rescuers, but as witnesses. You kneel, not to pray, just to rest. And then, for the first time in what feels like years, you exhale. The reeds sway, the birds sing, and somewhere behind you, the old colony fades from the world. One last footprint vanishes. In the dust, one last name slips into legend. And you become part of something older, something deeper, something the wind itself cannot forget.
The village greets you with a kind of quiet that isn't emptiness, but acceptance. You don't understand the language spoken by the people here, but somehow the meaning comes through anyway. You nod when they nod. You sit when they sit. And no one asks you where you came from. They already know. Or maybe they don't care. Maybe everyone here arrived from somewhere strange, somewhere that no longer exists. The old man you saw earlier beckons you to a hut near the center of the village. It smells like cedar smoke and earth. He gives you a bowl of stew. You eat slowly, your hands trembling, not from fear, but from the sudden warmth of being cared for. He gestures toward the wall where something hangs from a wooden peg. You squint. It's a piece of cloth, faded red. The corner bears a mark, an English cross, torn from a flag, perhaps? You look at him. He nods. The message is clear. Others came before you. You're not the first, and maybe not the last. Later that evening, a fire is lit in the center of the village. Not a roaring flame, but a controlled, steady burn. The kind of fire that feels like it's always been there. You sit with the others and watch. No one speaks for a long time. Then a woman stands. She begins to sing. The words are strange, but the melody stirs something in you. A memory you cannot place, a tune you once hummed while carving a fence post, or maybe while watching Eleanor braid Virginia's hair. It doesn't matter. The feeling matters more than the fact. You let the warmth sink into your bones. That night you sleep on a mat of woven reeds. There is no door, only a flap of hide hanging loose in the frame. You hear owls, crickets, the soft lapping of water on shore. It is the first sleep in weeks that feels like rest instead of retreat. In the morning, you are given new clothes, lighter than your own. They smell of smoke and berries. The children giggle at your awkward movements. The elders nod their approval. A boy paints something on your face with white clay and charcoal. You don't know what the marks mean, but they feel like belonging. You help gather roots and berries. You carry water from a stream. You sweep the paths with a bundle of reeds. It feels like penance, or healing, or maybe both. At some point, a girl hands you a bundle wrapped in deer hide. You unwrap it. Inside is a familiar object, a wooden bowl you carved back in the colony. Your initials faint on the underside. You blink hard. This should not be here. You never brought it. No one could have. The girl shrugs and runs off laughing. Historians still argue whether the Roanoke settlers were absorbed into the Croatoan tribe. Some say they intermarried. Some say they were enslaved or sacrificed. Others insist no real evidence exists either way. But you're here now, holding something you once made, in a place no map can find and no theory can explain.
By the third day, you begin to forget the names of the months, the way the dates worked, the rigid clock of the colony. Here, time is marked by the height of the tide, the shape of the moon, the calls of certain birds. It is slower, but not simpler, and certainly not dull. There are stories told in the evenings, not read from paper, but drawn in ash on the dirt, sung in tones that echo beyond the firelight. One night, you hear the word again, Croatoan. It comes at the end of a chant, soft and final. You shiver, but do not ask, because now you understand that not every word is meant to be explained. Some are meant to be carried, spoken once, and then left behind like an offering. You spend more time near the edge of the marsh, watching the birds, sometimes thinking of John White, of the ship that never came back in time. You wonder what he saw when he returned. An empty camp, a single word on a post, maybe your own footprints already fading in the mud. You wonder what he told the others back in England, what stories they passed around fires, what rumors became legend. You wonder if your name was ever mentioned. Once, twice, or not at all. It doesn't matter now. Here, your name is not what defines you. It is your hands, your quietness, the way you listen before speaking. You carve again, not fences or huts, but small birds, wolves, faces. They hang from trees, they drift in water. Children collect them and laugh. You begin to smile without realizing it. One day, the old man who first welcomed you takes your hand and leads you to a high place, a ridge that overlooks the sea. From there, you can see the outline of Roanoke across the water, faint, but still there. You feel a strange ache in your chest, not sorrow, not regret, just distance. You are no longer that person, the one that landed on the Carolina coast full of hope and hunger. That person is gone. Melted into the trees, folded into the river, carved into the spiral on a weathered door. You place a small figure at the edge of the ridge, a carving of Virginia, tiny and smiling, with shell eyes and a scratch for a mouth. You say nothing, but the wind says thank you, and the waves below carry her spirit onward.
You wake to the soft rustling of leaves and a pale gold sky filtering through the treetops. The season has shifted without asking your permission. The nights come faster now, and the wind has picked up its pace. Your joints ache a little more in the morning, and the air tastes like smoke and cold river stones. In the village, everything moves slower, but somehow feels fuller. People rise early without being rushed, and sleep late without being restless. You have started waking before the others and sitting by the water to watch the mist swirl along the surface like it's whispering secrets from another world. Some days you forget you were ever part of something called a colony. That word feels stiff now, like a costume that no longer fits. Here, you are not a settler. You are simply a body in motion, a spirit among others. You are handed tasks without being told, and thanked with nods and smiles, and food slipped into your hand without a word. One morning, a child gives you a bundle of reeds tied in a perfect knot. Inside is a small shell with a hole in the middle. It whistles when the wind hits it just right. You wear it around your neck and forget it's there. By now, you understand most of what the villagers say, though you still cannot say much back. But you don't need to. Words are not the only language here. There's a way to say thank you with just the way you pour water into someone's cup. There's a way to say, I'm sorry, by fixing a broken fishing net without being asked. At night, you join the others around the fire as they sing. The songs no longer feel foreign. You've begun to hum along with them. Sometimes you catch yourself singing alone, in your own language, words no one else knows, but the tune carries meaning anyway. You carve small figures now, not out of duty, but out of habit. You leave them near the fire, on doorsteps, on tree stumps. No one speaks of them, but you sometimes see children whispering near them or placing them gently in baskets. Your hands remember skills from before, how to shape wood, how to tie rope, how to mend clothes. But now you learn new ones too, how to read weather in the birds, how to use ash to clean, how to tell if someone is hurting without them saying a word. The old man who gave you stew when you first arrived begins teaching you the symbols carved in wood and stone. They are not letters. They are moments, events, echoes. One spiral for the beginning, 2 marks for journey, a rising line for a good death. He tells you that stories are carried in circles, not in straight lines, that time bends like rivers and returns where it began. You nod and feel the truth of it in your bones. Evenings become quieter. There is less laughter now and more watching, more listening. A restlessness settles into the edges of camp. You feel it in your chest, like something is approaching, or like something has already happened and the world is waiting to catch up. The sky turns red for 3 nights in a row. The old man says this means a choice is coming. You do not ask what kind. You begin preparing bundles, food dried and packed tight, a spare robe, a piece of charcoal. You do not know where you are going, but your hands prepare anyway. You spend one last afternoon with the children by the river. They paint your arms with juice and ash, draw spirals and suns and birds in flight. One girl presses her forehead to yours and whispers your name. Not the English name, the one they gave you here. It means something like water between trees. Or maybe it just means one who stayed. That night, they light a larger fire than usual. Everyone gathers, even the elders, who barely move anymore. There is no feast, only silence. Then, one by one, people step forward and place something into the fire. A feather, a stone, a strip of bark, a drawing. You step forward too. You place your shell whistle into the flames. It hisses once and is gone. Your hands tremble slightly as you walk back. No one says goodbye, because no one is leaving, but everyone knows something is ending. You sleep that night with your bundle beside you. You dream of the ocean, of a ship that never arrives, of a voice calling your name in the dark. You wake before dawn. The fire is still smoldering, the village still and half hidden in fog. You walk to the edge of the marsh where a canoe waits. You knew it would be there. You do not know who made it, but you run your hand along its side and whisper thanks. You push off. The current is familiar now. The trees drift by like old friends. You do not look back, not because you are afraid to, but because you no longer need to. The sky grows brighter as you paddle, the wind colder. Ahead you see a beach, a small clearing beyond, the shape of something you once called home. You pull the canoe onto the shore and step onto land. The sand is soft underfoot. You walk slowly toward the remains of the colony, toward a memory. The palisade is mostly gone, the huts collapsed inward like tired lungs. You move through the ruins without fear. There is no one here. But there is something, a hush, a presence. You kneel where the fire pit used to be and dig with your hands. You find ashes, a piece of bone, a rusted nail. You do not cry. You simply sit. The silence does not press in this time. It holds you gently. The wind moves through your hair, and for the first time in many nights, you do not dream of being found. You dream of being remembered.
You wake before dawn to a sky not yet ready for light. The fire near your feet has turned to glowing ash, and the faint smell of smoke clings to your skin. You sit up slowly, listening. There are no footsteps, no distant drums, no whispering wind through cedar leaves, just silence. And then, very faintly, like something whispered through the branches overhead, you hear the word again, Croatoan. You don't know if it's memory, wind, or dream, but you don't question it. Not anymore. You gather your bundle, still light from the offerings you've left behind. You keep only what matters now, some dried berries, a flintstone, a carved spiral wrapped in hide, and your paddle. You walk across the soft sand toward the edge of the forest. The same trail you followed once in fear now unfolds before you like a welcome path. The trees lean slightly, heavy with dew and age. Your fingers brush along a pine trunk, the resin warm under your hand. You step carefully, following your own footprints from days before, now softened by weather and time. The underbrush parts easily. It knows you now. You are no longer an intruder. By mid-morning, the sound of surf returns. First distant, like thunder in memory, then stronger, louder, until the trees open to the beach, and there it is, the ocean, gray and endless, the place where everything began, and maybe the place where it will end. You climb the same dunes where you once waited for ships that never returned, where you once watched John White disappear into the horizon, thinking he'd return with barrels of food, planks of hope, arms full of England, but the sea gave nothing back. You sit in the dune grass. The wind whips your hair into your face and dries the sweat on your skin. The surf thunders in its rhythm, as though it too is repeating something important. Croatoan, Croatoan. You say it aloud now, not like a mystery, but like a name, like a direction. Croatoan. It feels different on your tongue now, not fearful, not desperate, just true. You rise, barefoot, and walk toward the remnants of the colony, past fallen posts, half-swallowed huts, a collapsed lookout tower, and the old well, now dry. You walk past it all until you reach the last standing post. There it is, the carving. Faint, yes, but there, the word, Croatoan. You kneel before it, run your fingers over the letters. The grooves are softer now, worn by wind and sand, but your skin knows them. You remember when it was cut. You remember who did it. You remember the quiet that followed. The fire was out. The corn was gone. The vote had been made, and it was the only word you could leave behind, the only map that wouldn't be washed away. You close your eyes and remember their faces, the ones who left with you, the ones who stayed behind, the ones who vanished before either choice. Their voices echo behind your eyelids. You don't open your eyes yet. You sit there a while longer, tracing the edges of what was and feeling what still is. Eventually, you walk the perimeter of the camp. You stop at the garden plot, where weeds now choke the last rows of bean poles. You find a rusted spoon half buried near the cooking pit. You pick it up and hold it in your hand. It still carries the curve of someone's mouth long ago. You leave it beside the word on the post, like a gift, like a memory returned to its place. As the sun climbs higher, the shadows stretch back toward the forest. You feel the pull again, the urge not to stay, but to move. Not out of fear, but fulfillment. You know now why people vanish. It's not always tragedy. Sometimes it's choice. Sometimes it's transformation.
You weren't lost. You were changing shape. You gather driftwood for one last fire, a circle of stones, dry leaves. You spark it with practiced ease, watching the flame rise slow and steady. You place the last carving, a bird with open wings, into the center. It catches quickly, the wings curling inward before disappearing in smoke. You sit beside the fire and begin to hum, one of the songs from the village. You don't remember all the words, but the tune comes easy. Your voice blends with the wind. The sea responds with its own low chant. You close your eyes again. In that moment, you feel the presence of the others, not ghosts, not memories, just echoes, humming with you, around you, inside you. The ones who carved, the ones who walked, the ones who watched the horizon until their eyes burned. The fire dies slowly, the ash scatters in the breeze, and the smoke carries east, out toward the water. And again the word comes, Croatoan. This time it's not carved in wood or whispered in dreams. It's in your breath. You rise, barefoot, and press your hand into the sand. You leave no signature, no trail, but you leave something. You walk into the tree line and don't look back. Behind you, the waves continue to roll. The wind stirs the ashes. The word fades into silence. You step forward, deeper into the green, and vanish. Not lost, not afraid, not erased, just changed.
You wake in a circle of trees, their trunks silver in the morning light, the air damp with mist and pine. There is no fire now, no food left, no voice calling you. Yet something in you is calm. You're not afraid. You roll onto your side and listen. A bird calls twice, then falls silent. Somewhere behind you, a twig snaps. You don't flinch. You only listen. This is how you know the others are near. You move slowly through the morning hush, careful not to disturb what remains of the world. The soil is soft underfoot, the ferns brushing your knees. As you walk, you recognize pieces of your old life in strange places. A length of rope, frayed and weather-bleached, now used to secure a drying rack strung between trees. A bit of blue cloth that once belonged to Thomas, now hanging from a child's waist like a sash. A name scratched into bark, nearly faded, but still there. They made it here. The ones who left the message, the ones who chose to walk away. You come to a place that feels like the edge of something. Not a cliff, not a clearing, but a threshold. The light is different here, brighter, slanted, as if the forest has given way to another kind of space. You kneel, press your palm into the soil, and feel warmth rise through your skin. You breathe deeply and let it settle into you. Then you hear it, the rhythm of footsteps, dozens of them, moving slowly, not toward you, but past you, a procession of memory, or spirit, or both. You don't see them, but you feel them move, the ones who came before, the ones who vanished, their stories winding around yours like vines around a post. You close your eyes and let the silence speak. Somewhere behind you, a child laughs. The sound is soft, almost carried off by the wind, but it's there. You turn slowly, and for a moment, only a moment, you think you see someone standing at the edge of the trees, a small figure, barefoot, holding something glowing in their hands. But when you blink, they're gone. And yet, something has changed. You walk again, now without aim, simply moving through the green. At some point, you come to a stream and kneel beside it. The water is clear, reflecting the gray-blue sky. You wash your face, your hands, then sip. It tastes of stone and sky and pine. It is enough. You sit there for a long while. The day passes around you. The birds return. A squirrel scolds you from a low branch. You see fish dart beneath the water's skin. No one comes for you. No voice calls you back. But you're not alone. Never really alone. By late afternoon, clouds roll in. The air turns heavy, like a blanket too thick for comfort. You stand and stretch. Your legs ache, but your breath is steady. You climb a slope you've never seen before and find yourself looking down at a new place. Small homes made from bent saplings and bark. Smoke curling from 3 fire pits. Children running between rows of drying fish. A woman stirring a pot with one hand and brushing her baby's hair with the other. And then you see him. Manteo. Older now, or maybe just changed, like you. He stands at the edge of the camp, looking up at you. He does not smile. He does not wave. He simply nods once, and you understand. You walk down toward him, each step easier than the last. When you reach him, he says nothing, only places a hand on your shoulder and leads you into the circle of homes. They make room for you without question. A bowl of food appears in your hands, a blanket over your shoulders. A child offers you a carved bird and watches as you place it in your lap. Later, around the fire, someone sings. You know the song. You hum along. That night, you sleep beneath a roof again, but not the kind nailed together by settlers with plans and blueprints and hopes tied to a country across the sea. This roof is curved like a rib cage, lined with moss, alive with breath and shadow. You sleep deeply. In your dream, the fire returns. You see the faces of those you left behind, not lost, not frightened, just distant, like stars. You reach toward them, but do not try to grab. You let them shine. You let them go. When you wake, the sun is already high. You rise slowly, stretch your arms, and step outside. The camp is awake. Someone is singing. Someone is laughing. Manteo stands beside a tree, carving something into its bark. You approach, curious. He steps aside, lets you see. There, in deep, dark lines, are 3 shapes: a spiral, a hand, and one word: Croatoan. You smile. You place your hand next to the carving. It fits. You breathe deeply, and in that breath is the past, the present, and something like peace. The others have not vanished. They have become. You are not the end of a story. You are its next chapter. You sit beside the fire as dusk comes again. The children are already falling asleep in hammocks and furs. The smoke drifts upward like memory. You lean back, eyes half closed, listening to the soft sound of breathing all around you. And for the first time in many nights, you do not wait for anything. You are already home.
So now, the fire has burned low, and the wind outside your window may be starting to rustle the leaves or tap softly at the glass. Wherever you are, however your day has been, let this quiet place linger in your mind. Picture the soft sand of the Carolina coast, the tall trees whispering secrets to the sky. And that last word, carved into the bark, just one word, weathered and waiting, like a name half remembered in a dream. Let your breath slow, let the world go quiet. All that you saw, the storm, the firelight, the voices in the woods, they're far behind you now. They belonged to another time, another shape of you, the one who walked the dunes in silence, the one who finally let go. That person, that story, has settled into the earth, safe, still, whole. And here you are, listening, drifting, becoming lighter. Let the firelight in your imagination dim now, glowing only gently. Let the last trace of smoke fade into starlight. Let the sea hush. Let the pine needles still. The story has been told. The wind has moved on. And now you are part of the silence. Good night, traveler. Sleep well.